right, I want to get working on putting this together, but so we got a 2003 transmission, or 2003 Cummins engine out of a Dodge pickup. The engine harness is sent to diesel conversion specialists so they can make the harness for a standalone, you know, so the engine can run right here, and it's going to give me an OBD port so I can have my bully dog in the grain truck for watching engine stuff, RPM, oil pressure, water temp, that kind of stuff. The fan right now, I just want to figure out which wires to put power and ground to lock that fan clutch up. The existing carburetor linkage to this throttle position sensor, everybody moves the same direction. Everybody's not far off, so I might just have to weld that linkage up and extend it. That's pretty simple. The truck might already have an external voltage regulator, which we then just wire into this alternator, because in the pickup, the alternator was controlled or regulated with the chassis computer. Overall, this is really coming together kind of interesting and very well. So I got the flywheel housing off, and the original intent to find like a Road Ranger transmission in there and eliminate that secondary box, the second stick. The problem is the truck is like 688 or 713 rear ends, which means if I went to a single transmission, even with overdrive, I'd be absolutely screaming down the road trying to get to my 50 mile an hour, which ain't the end of the world, but isn't very convenient at the same time. And so I just happened to be on a service call, and the farmer had the ZF6-750 transmission with the PTO provision out in his garage. So we just did some horse trading. I had some parts here he wanted, and I traded him for that transmission. You guys are always very good at asking questions. So your question now is, but John, the Ford transmission has a very different bolt pattern for the bell housing than the Cummins did when it was in a Dodge pickup. Well, funny you ask. Diesel conversion specialists, the guys who are updating or modifying the engine wire harness, also built a new flywheel housing. So you can see the Cummins bolt pattern and the Ford bolt pattern. So it mates the Cummins to the Ford. They also work with South Bend to build us a clutch. I went with the twin disc clutch just because of the weight that we're always going to be running and the amount of shifting that we're doing. This isn't a hot shot truck that we need to just, you know, get up to speed and then we're just going to sit there, you know, at 40, even if it, you know, hot shotters at 40,000, whatever, we're going to be close to 50,000. But we're going to be shifting a lot. So we went with the twin disc because I thought it would last us longer. And then I've got the a pre-bled master and slave hydraulic clutch kit in there. So a lot of parts are coming together. So the goal right now is to get the back of this engine cleaned off and then get that flywheel housing bolted on, get the clutch and the flywheel and everything bolted on, and then let's see if we can't get that transmission bolted up. And if we have time today, I'd like to get the truck backed in to this corner, and that lofty goals. So here's our plate. Looking at the instructions, there's 2 spots we got to clean some material off of. We've got our flywheel spacer and hardware. So let's get the back of the block cleaned up and see if we can't grind that material off now and hope it's enough. So I don't know if that's a starter clearance thing or what, but I'll do the best I can. Starter sits on something like that. They've got this seal in for the end of the cam is right here. So they got this nice seal in here. Our dowel pins. I think everything looks pretty okay. So let's set this to the engine. We don't have to tighten it down, but just kind of get it on the dowel pins and close. And then we'll put the starter on and see how it looks. If I gotta grind more on the block or not. So I test fit the starter. I wouldn't have had to grind the block at all, but the back of my starter is just hitting this fitting. So before I do anything, I'll call them tomorrow and see if that's another return oil boss right there that I can just move the turbo line to, or if there's something other guys have done right here. So I took some time. I got the starter mounted up. We're going to relocate the turbo return to the front there, so that's a simple fix. Got this bolted up and torqued in, torquing up the flywheel. Starter's in, everything looks really good there. Starter to the block clearance is fine. But it took a few minutes, and since we're adding an aftermarket, a fast electric pump and filter system, I could take that factory filter system off the block. There was a couple brackets on the block, clean that up, and then we had a transmission, a water, since it's an automatic transmission, you had a water cooler heater exchanger right here. So got that out of the way and eliminated that plumbing. Got some caps, a cap here and a cap up there. So that eliminated some plumbing, kind of cleaned up the block a little bit. So then we just got to torque up this flywheel, and I'm doing an initial torque crisscross pattern of 44 pounds, just because I ended up at 44 pounds because that's where these bolts were. And then we'll hit it with a 90-pound, kind of difficult to do with one hand. And then we'll put this clutch together and see how all that stuff looks. So yeah, it's coming together fairly nice. This diesel conversion specialist, if you have any questions, so far I had 1 million questions getting started on the project and sourcing parts, and them guys have been extremely helpful. So yeah, we'll get this torqued up and get our flywheel. So like I said, it's a twin disc, so it's almost like the tractors. Instead of a traction spacer plate PTO, you just got traction spacer plate traction, just like a 50/20, like a 50/20 John Deere. So there you go. I got the clutch disc, the intermediate plate, and the back clutch disc on. They send this paper with your torque specs, 90 to 100 on the crank or the flywheel bolts, 40-45 on the pressure plate bolts. So I get him locked headed and torqued down. Clutch alignment tool's already in. There we go. That's torqued up and ready to go. I've never seen a clutch fork set up like this. I don't do automotive stuff, so everything is Greek to me. But to me, that's how that should sit, because I'd assume that ball would be your pivot ball, and then you have some sort of cylinder that comes through this side to run this clutch, I would presume. So then he has to sit in here something like this. We'll get this transmission in there and cleaned up a little bit. But he has to sit in there something like that. So I don't know. We'll take a gander, I guess. Well, there's our fork. It gave us a new plastic holder for this side. So that's in place. So yeah, worked pretty good. And we got our slave cylinder here. For right now, I'm just leaving this off. And then after lunch, we'll swing that transmission over here and see if we can't get it bolted up. Oh, nice. Nice. Maybe we should have checked this spline to double check everything. It's the same. Woo! Oh, he's in place. I'll just get this hood right out of here. Here's one of the problems. You got goo coming out the overflow of the radiator. That can't be a good sign. That can't be a good sign, but man, that engine blows off a lot of heat. He's gonna sit there for a little while I get this hood off of here, get that battery out of there, do some of the little stuffs. But yeah, fairly cut and dry. So everything is just a few inches. So I saved all the cooling package from the Cummins. So we got our intercooler, our radiator, our transmission cooler. So everything just adds a few inches. So the cooling package is a few inches thicker. The engine's only a couple inches longer. The transmission's only a couple inches longer. But we do have that gap there between the two transmissions with that drive shaft. So you got almost 1.5 feet of distance there. And I suppose with some imagination, you could always move that brown box back. But I think with that much distance between the two, if you got 1.5 feet, you burn up 8 inches. So you just take that drive shaft out and go have it made to connect that ZF to that brown box. Not the end of the world. So yeah, the goal is to get this out and then float that diesel with that 6-speed in here and kind of get the tail shaft lined up to that brown box. And then when that's hooked up, then get a cross member for that tail shaft of that transmission, and then kind of set the engine elevation wise where it needs to be. Overall, I think it should go pretty okay. You can get something done. So all I did was take the bolt off and unplug the headlights, and then with a trolley on each side, I just hooked the fender, just lifted it up, floated it off, set it down, and then just flipped its nose onto the pallet. So then if I need to, I can use a pallet jack to get out of my way. So next, still kind of hot, but let's see if we can get some water out of there. Let's see if we can get some water out of there and get that radiator out of our way. Here we go. Engine's ready to come out. There really isn't much to it. Cut your exhaust pipe, disconnect the drive shaft. On the right hand side, all you got is your harness from the alternator, your coil, water, oil, your engine harness, a gas line, heater hoses, battery cable. Pretty simple. Left side, you got some clutch linkage, PTO rear drive shaft, I might have said, throttle. So there really isn't a whole lot holding this in. And that's your rear mount. Just that big saddle sits on a big pin right inside there, and your front just sat down in that cross member. By golly, couple hours, 2-3 hours, and we're to this point. So I'll slide him out and figure out where to go with him, set him down, and we can measure up the overall length compared to the donor engine and see where we're at. So there you go. That is a massive old gas engine. It's heavy. You'd be surprised how heavy that puppy really is. So there we go. Let's figure out how to get this out of our way, and then get that assembly over here somehow. We got to vaccinate cattle and stuff too, so I don't know what I'm getting done.